the Deputy Mayor, fellow councillors, sorry, not fellow councillors, I beg councillors and staff. And we have two apologies, one from His Worship the Mayor and the other from Councillor Madwick. So could I have a move for the apologies?
So move.
Seconded, thank you. Now, the declaration of interest has been circulated by Teams. As you know, I'm not on the Teams, but I have no additional declarations of interest to declare. Does anyone else have anything that's changed since they last updated the register? No. Thank you. We have an urgent item to add to the agenda. It's the Audit Management Report for the year ended 30th of June 2021. And I would like to move that we add the Audit Management Report for the year ended 2021 to the Audit Risk Committee for the following reasons. The reason why it's not on the agenda is the report was only received in actual fact 2 days ago. So it was received after the agenda had been issued. And the reason why the discussion cannot be delayed until a subsequent meeting is because the fact that the report has been significantly delayed, it is of high interest to the ratepayers and community of Westland, as the report relates to the performance of council at the financial year ended 30th of June 2021. And as you will be aware, our next audit risk meeting is actually August 2022, which will be getting into the finish of the next financial year and possibly the start of the audit. So if I move that, look at the second.
Second that.
Okay. Now turn to the minutes of the last meeting. Does anybody have any comments or corrections to the minutes of that meeting? If not, could I have a mover that the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on 17th of February 2022 be confirmed as a true and correct record of the meeting?
So move.
Second. Thank you. We have turned to the action list. Leslie, if you could take us through that.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, councillors. We've got 5 items on the Audit and Risk Committee action listing. The first item is the insurance review of the airport assets, which is still outstanding. The CE has a meeting with Destination Westland CE tomorrow, I believe, and I'm hoping this item can be mentioned at that meeting. We can progress that. The next item is the workshop, the evaluation of the performance of the committee. Obviously, this has been delayed because of COVID situation. We will be looking to carry out this before the end of the triennium. The next item was the OAG risk management workshop, which has actually been completed. So I recommend that this is removed from the list going forward. The police review, or the policy on police vetting was brought to the committee meeting in February and further information was requested. This has also been delayed due to the COVID situation and not being able to get the relevant information in time for this meeting. The policies for review for the action for the work plan has been added to the committee agenda as a standing item. So I recommend that this item is now removed from the action list going forward.
Thank you. Anyone, any comments or thoughts on the action list?
It'd be really nice to be able to tick those ones off before you change your council. Yeah, that's really.
In that case, would anyone like to move that the updated action list be received? Updated being removal of the 2 items, the risk management workshop and the policies, because they now run as a standing item. So can I have a moving, please?
Sure.
Second. Thank you.
For the presentation, I believe.
I was just going to say, do we have a...
I just, sorry, through the chair, I just called them and they don't think they can make it after all that.
We need to catch up with them very quickly when they can, but that's something you can range offline, obviously.
Yeah.
in that case, I think we could still, it would be useful to still have a discussion around who we can. If our committee members are comfortable with that. So we'll move to item 6, but that presentation bit. And I welcome any feedback. I mean, you have been through quite a number of audits in your governance roles, and now got a potential, we've got a new audit firm. You've had a look through the plan. Have you got any thoughts as to what you think looks promising, what you think is areas we might want more detail on? Any thoughts at all would be very welcome.
I don't. It seems pretty kosher to me.
Councillors? Is there, would you like to make any comments on the plan? Because you've had a lot of hands-on experience with being audited.
The items that they're looking at being focus don't seem to be much different to what is generally as focus for us. So I don't see a problem with that. It's quite good that they've determined what the approach to each of those items will be, so we'll know better how to manage that from the start. So if it's substantive or control environment, that will help. So knowing that up front is good, but it's rather a lot of reading just for a look at that, I must say. I'm concerned about the timelines. We haven't got any detailed timelines. We need to know exactly what those timelines are. We also need to have upfront information on what they want at what specific time. So obviously it's not going to be everything on the first day, but we need to have a detailed plan on what they're going to prioritise in those first few days and weeks.
Are you the primary point of contact going through the process with the MOU, Leslie?
Yeah.
Or do you have someone else below you who?
Lindley will provide all the information. She'll be that link, and she is the one that they will be talking to mainly, but I'm there to oversee it, and if there are any issues, they should be coming to me to tell me what those issues are, so I can find a way to deal with those going from that point. And progress, they need to keep me updated on progress. So that was another question we were going to ask them today, was how often they were going to catch up with me. Audit New Zealand used to do it weekly, and if they would escalate anything that was urgent to me outside of that period as well.
Do they need to physically come here as part of the process, or
that's another question we were going to ask them. Audit New Zealand spent 3 days a week here, which was good. They quite enjoyed that, and we quite enjoyed it because it gave us time to get information, get all these requests for information. And those 2 days where they weren't here gave us a bit of time just to collect it all and then get it to them. So that is something we were wanting to discuss with them today. So it's a bit disappointing that they haven't come, and we would have liked to work through some of these questions with them.
I've thought about that, and this is right off the top of my head. So on travelling, one of the things they talked about in here was Brendan, but the partner was available to meet with myself prior to meetings and some of the other things. And I was travelling back from Christchurch tomorrow, and I'm going to be sitting around twiddling my thumbs for quite a few hours at one point. If the committee was helpful, being the executive team, and it was possible to organise it.
Good idea.
There isn't any reason why we couldn't come and see them.
Yep.
And then the questions that Leslie's gone through, plus a couple of other ones that I did, which are all around detailed logistics. Who's going to be there, when they're going to be, how many people do they need, to make sure it fits with their teams, with our guys can work with. So if that's something I'm happy to do that if put together.
It's going to be interesting to see how they compare with Audit New Zealand, isn't it? Because you certainly had your issues over the years with them, just to see whether it's a better process.
They've got a reputation there, so they've got to uphold that reputation, so they should be better. But
It's all about the personalities, though. At the end of the
It
day,
is all about personalities, yeah. Sadly, yes, it's good. I think it's good for us to have a refresh and not have Audit New Zealand going forward. So I was quite looking forward to working with Ernst & Young, but getting that first presentation today and answering these questions which we've put to them previously but haven't had a response. Would be really good if they made the effort to have that face-to-face.
but you could probably just pick up the phone and have a chat, I guess.
Well, we've tried that in the past, but Rachel has managed to speak to them.
Oh, okay.
It was a deliberate number. But so if you're thinking that's a possibility, because the other thing that we'd like to ensure is that an effective and efficient approach, in other words, delivering the assurance that is needed at the minimum cost, is what we're looking for. And in the digital side of things, they reference various tools and so on. And I personally would be expecting to see an efficient audit, which means a cheaper audit. So we don't want to start from a premise. I'm not saying that we are.
But just remind me, what's the basis they're charging on?
Well, they'll be basing it on last year's.
Yeah, what else said is that we have this audit fee that we'd agreed with for 3 years with Audit New Zealand. So they're going to charge us that rate that the Audit New Zealand would have charged us. So they're keeping it at that. But the argument that we have is, as you just pointed out, the issues with Audit New Zealand, that charge has built-in inefficiencies in it. So I don't think they should be using that fee.
So will they use it this year and then look at dropping it down?
Hopefully, yeah.
Because the thing is that we are penalised, aren't we? We have a very efficient system and require a few issues and so on from their perspective. Then we are sort of penalised if it's a global fee. So it's like if you have a really nice house, it makes it easy for land agents to sell, so they do well on the commissions. The same here, isn't it? If our systems are functioning really well internally, it makes the audit easier and therefore it should be cheaper, but I bet it doesn't work out that way.
No, I'm sure it won't. But, we're not going to say, we will ask, that's for sure, and we have. We have pointed out already to them that, we're concerned about the fee being higher than we would have liked to have seen it. It's an opportunity, really, potentially for them to take the loss being the first time, if it does turn out to be more hours. But
the first audit with a new client, by definition, there is a learning curve, and so there's that side of it. But then you're expecting to have an ongoing relationship. It's just 3 years to start.
that's right. Yeah.
And secondly, what you don't want to do is, if the previous auditors or accountants or whatever else professional body it is, if they've been inefficient, you don't want those inefficiencies built in at your starting point. So there's areas where it would be good to try and keep that tight, but obviously still deliver what is required in terms of the right level of assurance.
Just suck it to see how it goes.
But just some of the tools they've got in here in terms of the potential for efficiency in some of these tools, it is there. And it'd be good to have that conversation as well. You just say, this and this, you can do this monitoring, you can bulk data, analysis, etc. How does that, in terms of hours, how does that using the digital tool translate into saved hours using more 310? So I think it would be. Not really a lot more we can do with it.
These big firms must make a fortune out of outputs like us, mustn't they? When there are really no significant audit issues at all, it's just playing around with it. And
well, I don't understand why the fees for us are so high anyway. We're not a complex case.
I know.
We're really not. And I understand we have, and we still have to a certain extent, issues with asset data. We know that. But that's being worked on. Timing, sometimes it's difficult to get the information that we need for the auditors at the time, such as revaluations. And that's one of our biggest things, is getting asset information, because and revaluation, because it takes us time to actually put those through the accounts. And then it takes time on top of that for audit to then start auditing it. So that's something we actually have to have right up front when we need it. When we've said we need it, that's when we need it. And that's one of the biggest issues that's held us up in the past.
Yeah, that's quite correct. If they've planned their time a certain way and something isn't given on time, they have to literally retool and start on something else, and that creates time which ends up getting back charged to the client's bill.
Because our internal systems now, as I understand it, never work better.
Yeah, and the system, the reporting system is really good, and Emily has been working really hard to get that absolutely spot on for what we need. But it's getting the data into the systems and the year-end adjustments that takes the time. Not so much the reporting and actually pulling those reports out. It's actually getting that data in there. And when we've got to do a lot of adjustments, like with this year's infrastructure evaluation, so that's a big one. It's bigger than last year with the land and buildings. That takes a lot of time. So it's getting those things into the systems first of all that actually takes the time for us.
Okay. Any first thoughts on our non-presentation?
It'll be interesting to hear back from you, Rachel, after tomorrow if you do catch up with them.
Yeah, actually, just on there, it's probably prudent to try and arrange something in the afternoon, because if the flight gets cancelled and you go on the shuttle, probably won't get there till about so I would say probably from 2 o'clock onwards. So please. Okay. What we move here, just the reports. The audit plan's been received, I suppose. In that case, I will move that the audit plan for the year ended 30 June 2022 has been received.
So, second that.
Thank you. We now move to the staff reports.
Are we doing the urgent item, or are we going on to the financial report?
Sorry, I mean, I thought we were doing the urgent one now.
Lindley?
Sorry, you can do.
Good afternoon, everyone. I present the 43 report on behalf of Leah and myself. I'll take it as read and ask if there are any questions through the chair. Thank you.
Councillor Hart, any questions?
Just a comment, very comprehensive report and a lot of detail in there, so it's a great report to have.
Thank you.
Yes, I make the same comment. It's a huge amount of work and effort.
Yes, thank you, Emma.
Chair, can I just add that we haven't been able to have all the financials we normally put in the report due to staff absences, so we were unable to get the treasury information and the full information, the reserves that we would normally put into the quarterly report in this instance.
Can I ask, is there anything in the report that you think you need to bring to our attention?
No, not at this point.
No red flags or?
No, not at this point. No, I think it's going quite well at this stage.
Opening for new council.
I've got a couple of questions, but they're all around the performance measures. But it's probably because of not having the level of detailed knowledge.
Emma, answer please, Emma.
Let's go to. We commented at our last meeting that some of the performance measures never seem to actually turn up in the report, and I see there was one or two this time as well that were not reported. Is that, I just wonder if we could just do a bit of analysis on that and see if it's a consistent pattern of non-reporting. Bear in mind that I know that cohorts.
I know this is, I think it's some teams that did not actually get sent to. Yeah.
Probably get
Yeah, that through. Again, I think it's not been too bad this time. I think the thing we have is that, again, we've got to have staff absences, and not everybody's been able to be available to answer all the questions.
Do staff working from home increase our risk profile?
We've got very good systems, so and security. We use HTML5, which is a secure network, so it doesn't increase the risk in that respect. The only way it could do is if somebody needed to, if they had other people around them, so, yes, and they had something confidential on their desktop and they walked away and left it open that somebody could see. But the likelihood of somebody isolating them is likely to be a family member, and it wouldn't be such a risk.
There's quite a simple solution to that too, and that's when you go away from your, but when I was working with Rose, they had tenders and all sorts, you always locked it. Yeah. I still do it all the time because it's ingrained. Yeah. And then even in the home, you've got the same thing. You've got the screen.
It's recommended to do that here as well, even in the building. So it's just normal practice.
So access to council systems is always through a firewall anyway.
Yeah. Our firewalls are so strong sometimes we can't get through them when we need to carry out admin work.
But I suppose that if someone at home could leave the machine, the computer up and running, someone else could come in and sit down and get access, couldn't they?
Well, the thing is, they go to sleep every now and again, so every, I don't know what it is, 10, 15 minutes, so somebody would need their password.
But assuming they did that before we went to sleep. And
there's always that possibility. I think it's low risk because I don't think anybody in the family is going to want to access council systems for any.
And the other thing that occurs to me about that is that even if some person could access the system, what use is the information they're going to get anyway? I mean, it's there are no trading secrets or. I mean, what would be the relevance of it?
Probably just nosing on the people, having a look and seeing if they are in rates or something like that.
I can't imagine
it. To get into those systems, and we would know where to look and how to do it. So it's low risk.
Yeah, people control what to delete and lock their screens the minute they walk away from them. And the person will have to know the password, so perhaps people just encouraged to remember to do that.
Yeah. I'll check if it's in our policy.
Jumping to page 18, and this is an infrastructure question. Around the land transport and all the various delays which the whole country is having due to all the various shortages, is that going to affect our NZTA funding or anything like that? Is there a risk of loss?
Could I possibly?
The issue at the minute is we don't know. Certainly the bitumen costs will be massively through the roof, so the costs of the pipeline are going up. We are having to cut our profitability on small projects, and it may well mean if we don't get the funding through or top up from NZTA that we'll be not able to do most everything we need to do. So, we've been finding that there's an impact on materials across a whole range of areas. So there's an 18% increase in cost of steel, for example. There's an issue that NZTA reported recently on Porter's Pass where they had delays in starting the renovations to that because they've had lead time issues in terms of materials. So we're just watching it really, really, really closely. There's also a legal case going on at the moment where the basis of the cuts that were introduced have been challenged. So again, that could have an implication for us. We've not yet fully view on that either. So yeah, there is a bit of an unknown.
From the financing point of view, what sort of We've got that in your risk profile as potential.
It's in our profile.
Okay, thank you. The question, the water treatment plant was noted after research. Just due to a question at the end of April.
Response, that's fine, what page?
Arahura water treatment plant said it was scheduled for commissioning and operation after Easter 2022.
That's the one where the problem in Cuba.
So access to Kirrawal corridors, how it is up again.
Oh.
So there's a transformer that needs to go around to supply power. So waiting for Kirrawal for this approval to install.
We're expecting the response within the next 14 days, but it's actually ready to roll. The whole thing ready to roll, subject to getting consent.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. That's interesting. The only other thing that I wondered about out of curiosity again was why the local authority's response to water issues, it's on page 24, it suddenly jumped up in the complaints department. So because people not able to get out from COVID, or it's just what increase from quarter 2 being 4 complaints to quarter 3, or current quarter being 10 complaints.
So we can find that information out for you and circulate it later.
Thank you. Anybody else got any questions or points of clarification?
A silly question, which is not really on the point. In terms of sort of risks and so on, can staff interfere with the system and issue, for example, to their friends or themselves, code compliance certificates for building work? Just trying to think of ways in which the computer system can be used for personal gain. Is it?
I would think with under, what are you talking about? What compliance?
Code compliance. So you apply for building consent.
Yeah.
So for example, say you were having a building work done in your house, and you decided I want a code compliance. So could you, not being part of the building department?
No, we have built in. There are several different layers, so some will have no access whatsoever by staff because they don't need it. Some will have a read only because they might need to see those things. And then officers who are carrying out consenting would have access to edit and issue. And then there's the administration on top of that, which would be able to set up people in that system. But they are only those in that team.
Right. So the same then would apply to finance, presumably, so that a limited number of employees in the council system could interact with your.
That's correct.
Like, so how many do you think?
In the finance team.
Well, how many council staff could interact with the figures?
Only the finance team. Not everybody would have the ability to do everything within the finance function.
Right.
So Lily, myself and the accountants would have a full access, although I don't, and I believe Lily as finance manager doesn't have access to actually set up customers and creditors, and that's because we approve them. So they have to be set up with someone else, by someone else, and we approve them afterwards. So there's that segregation of duties. So there is segregation of duties all the way through the finance functions. So not everybody, and the only things that other people can see within finance are they can just view their GLs and their figures, they can't change them. Everybody has access to setting up purchase orders, but dependent on what area they're in of council, they don't have access to set up for all GLs. Managers of those areas have access to approve only their own areas, whereas the executive team members have all areas. So there's segregation of duties all the way through.
Okay.
The other thing too is if someone approved, for example, a compliance certificate, the user that actually approved it is tracked, and historically it's always can find out who actually issued it.
Audit trails, you've got audit trails for everything.
So electronically audit trails, so you can always find out if it was issued by, and if we ever didn't have to do a follow-up, we can find out who did it.
So
Systems are set up that way these days.
what about incoming mail?
We have a mail logging system. So the customer service team get a letter or whatever, or a piece of correspondence, and they log it through a system. And then they'll save it somewhere in our systems and send it on to.
So if a ratepayer sends in a letter complaining about the chief executive, for example, who receives that and how's it dealt with?
So that potentially would come to either me or the mayor. But we have another item on the agenda next, which is about customer complaints, which would cover that kind of thing.
Yes, because remember in the early years in the law firms, when everything was by mail, you had this huge amount of mail used to come in before computers and so on. And so the issue was, well, who was opening the mail and getting the problems, and how so if there were complaints, so I would open the mail and a complaint came in about me, I would have an incentive to put it in my back pocket.
Well, it comes to the customer service staff there on the mail.
I realise these days that you don't get mail, but
well, most of it does come by email
Yeah.
or that way,
Yeah.
but we do still get the odd hard copy letters, but certainly nowhere near what we used to get. And most of it is just junk mail, really.
sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Rachel.
It was a really good question.
Yeah.
Just when you were talking about doing the mail, it's reminding me that it comes in and it gets stamped or someone receives such and such, and then there's a little list, and if it's checks, it will get ticked off and go to bank and the rest of it.
It's automatically done now.
If there's no further discussion on the quarterly report, I'd like to move that the report be received, and do I get a second?
Clearly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
We'll now move to the things we've already started on this one, complaints management policy.
What page is that?
It isn't, one didn't have another one, but it's 43. Straight after the,
Oh yeah.
It's page 53.
yeah, mine came out without numbers on, so we need to keep using.
So this report is recommending that the Audit and Risk Committee receive and endorse the draft customer complaints management policy. So this, just to give some background, which it is actually in the cover report, but this is not complaints such as in somebody's seen a broken pipe or something like that, where they're looking for a service request. It's a complaint similar to what you have just mentioned, Deputy Mayor Carruthers, regarding a complaint, say somebody's put a service request in for a broken pipe and they're not satisfied with the way that was handled. So it's a complaint in that respect. This is, we're putting a process together to go with this, which will be done through our website and our document management system. So if somebody has a complaint, they can either put this through the website, or they can telephone our customer service, who will put that complaint in for them. It will be progressed on to the group manager of whatever area that is, unless it's something that the customer service team can deal with, because we want them to be first, and if at all possible, last point of call. And the exec team will get periodic reporting on it, so we know what complaints have been dealt with, if not.
So we haven't had a policy like this before.
No.
Why not? That's amazing.
Exactly. Well, this is another body of work we're doing, which of course I'm sure you'll understand it is a massive body of work.
Yeah.
Is reviewing all our policies.
Yeah.
So making sure they're up to date, and also gives us a chance to stop take and see what we haven't got, which we really should have.
really formalise the procedure that's done informally now.
Yeah.
And put it into a very formalised process whereby everyone follows the same way of dealing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can also deal with, complaint about a councillor through myself on this channel through this work.
Yeah.
I think it's excellent the work that's doing with the policies, because it is a huge job drafting policies from scratch, and working through the process and then getting people educated about them and all these sorts.
I think you normally pinch someone else's, don't you?
That's always good stuff.
Well, this was originally pinched, but we've actually just butchered it and done our own thing with it once we got it.
There are quite a lot of very good templates available publicly, even from the sporting point of view. Sport New Zealand, for example, charities and not-for-profits to have a look at them because they've got good obviously councils.
Local government has a listserv which we can always go and do a request and get bombarded with all these various prototypes and policies, etc. We do quite often.
Crowdfunding for policies.
It's a good way to benchmark against the policies we have as well.
We don't get much in the way of complaints these days, do we? Of the kind that we're talking about?
No, we've had a few recently, but they start from can you do this for me in terms of it steps up in terms of you're not addressing my concerns.
Yeah.
That's where we would lodge it as a formal complaint.
Yeah.
Or whereby there's someone feels they've been victimised by council.
Yeah.
And they'll make a complaint that Victor came along and reached this, that, and which will follow the complaint process.
But these days, when people have complaints, they normally put a letter to the editor, don't they? Rather than addressing council, they generally take things to the media. That's the way they perceive they're going to get a better.
Yeah, I think this way I will actually start to, anything that I get which may seem informal, I might put through a proper complaints process so it's managed.
Yeah.
And that's when we can stop having these stasis type approaches where they come back every other day.
Yeah.
And the same complaint about something else.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good idea.
It will also help us because if we get the same thing, the same people, then it's an opportunity for us to identify that and put that training in place or put that process in place that needs to fix that. Whereas if it's hit and miss and we don't have a proper process and logging system that we can see that these things are becoming repetitive and problematic, then we can't actually deal with them.
Yeah.
It's a very good monitoring tool. And when you mentioned about festivals and vexations, I think it was, there was a wee while back, Auckland City Council, with someone making complaints about noise and wearing a different hat. We were doing an evaluation of all different types of complaints, and there was this one Auckland one, and it was just this fat. And this won't be exactly accurate because I don't remember the detail, but it's something like 25 minutes and things like that. This person would ring up and make a complaint, and it just went on and on. I don't know what they did about it, but
Christchurch City's getting the same amount of smells at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What did you see Jeffrey King on the
Yes, I did.
on the TV story? TV1 News.
Yes, it was on the printing is right beside it.
What a shame.
We've got any suggestions, additional amendments or thoughts on the policy, or are we happy with it in its current form?
Looks good.
In that case, do we have a mover that the report be received and that it be endorsed by the Audit Risk Committee? Okay, second it? You get to stay there, because sorry, I think you get to stay there.
I do,
yes. Wow. Thank you.
Okay. The next item is a suggestion from Madam Chair, and it's the committee reporting to full council. And the reason that Madam Chair can speak for herself, of course. I'll take the report as read, but it's a good way for us to keep risk at the forefront of councillors' minds, because it's a very important subject. And also it's a really good way to be able to have that open and transparent feedback process from the committee to the full council. So the suggestion is that the chair of the audit and risk will present the top 10 risks as reported at the committee to the full council at the first council meeting after an audit and risk meeting is held. I know it's a bit of a mouthful. And that there's an annual report taken to full council, of all the work that the committee has undertaken during the year.
Good idea.
I think she came about because there's a regular, roughly about every 2 months, possibly every 3 months, meeting with all the chairs of audit and risk committees. And I was actually supposed to present at the last one on internal audit, but we ended up with the reviews, so I co-presented and I was Jeff Morgan, ended up doing a whole lot. But as part of that discussion, because I got the recording and everything afterwards, the discussion was around how do people, to create that link with council and to keep that focus on risk. So that's where this generated from. And
just through the chair, are we expecting one in May then?
May.
when is the next council meeting?
26th. We need it to an next quarter. Starting.
But does it need to be an in-person? I mean, I wouldn't think that Rachel would need to, the chair would need to.
She can do, I think, in terms of the process, we can organise it. It'd be nice that at the full council that Rachel was there, the end of year review.
Well, we could probably, there was one suggestion I was going to make, as well as the top 10 risks, we also report on any risks that have changed. If you remember in this particular report, there was, I think, 3 risks that have changed and new and been added.
But we can defer it till June for this next round, because actually it's quite light in terms of agenda.
No, it's quite heavy, isn't it? Yeah.
And then you're into a whole new council scenario, aren't you, after that? So pretty much.
No, we have one more.
Oh, yeah, in August. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if June is
June would work for us.
totally fine with June. I would double check dates as on something. But that was the other thought I had too, was that we add, as well as the top 10, we also add any new risks and any changes. Yeah, so like exceptions, which I think people think would be good as well. Yeah.
But the risks are likely to be the same repeatedly, aren't they? They're not going to change, probably.
The top 10.
Yeah.
Well, they've not changed a lot. It's the same in the last couple of years, but COVID, that kind of thing. And part of the objective is to keep the focus on risk. Mm-hmm. And because at the end of the day, if the risk isn't changing, it's still a top risk. It may be getting, its status may be changing, which would be worse or whatever. And if there are any new risks and so on. And at some point, I suspect that in the next 12 months, some of the risks will change.
I think a lot of activity sits in behind that, which is what you want to talk about in terms of the controls that are going in to manage the risk. Yeah. Actually puts a focus back on staff to actually ensure they are doing their activity.
Yeah.
Even getting back to the audit office and the whole supervisory process is the increasing. I mean, risk has always been focused on, but it's increasing. It really is about the role of these committees is to look at the rest of the audit. Well, that's why there's, some committees are already changing their names to risk and assurance, because it's actually about risk and giving the governing body council assurance that. So it's just a part of that process of moving away from the audit and moving to this.
And in writing this report, I did also have a look at the OAG website and found a couple of really good papers on there about this, so incorporated some of that in here. So the OAG are recommending that this is carried out. It's done.
We lost body. Councillor Hart, any thoughts on the risk?
She probably can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. No, I think it's good. I think it's really good to be able to report back to council, full council.
Well, I'll turn it into a motion then, that the report be received and that the chair of the audit risk present the top 10 risks plus any new risks and any risks that have changed status to the first full council meeting after the audit risk committee was held. I suppose I should also cover the fact that the first report will reach the June council meeting, not the May council meeting. So if that's intelligible as a motion. Would I have a second of that?
I second that.
Thank you. And also that the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting provide an annual report to full council on the Audit and Risk Committee's work undertaken at each August council meeting,
It's interesting, and again, slightly off the point, from my experience in the legal profession, the greatest risks that law firms had from what were called defalcations, where people got a trust account, was from the best staff. So it was always the best staff, the most reliable staff, the staff who worked the hardest, who were doing the defalcations. And which is a sort of interesting commentary, because of the way we think of criminal behaviour, we think of people in trench coats, you know, and we have a certain perception in our minds of what criminal behaviour looks like. But in the context of the legal profession, it was the trust account manager who never took holidays, who worked longer hours than she had to, and was everyone loved because she was so on top of it. The reason she was so on top of it and worked so hard was controlling her criminal behaviour. And so that's the sort of problem we've got. So in an organisation like this, the most likely criminals are the people we're sort of sitting around the table, you know, the people who work the hard. And it's a silly thing to say, but that's the cold hard reality. That the people who are the most likely to cause trouble are the most trusted, because they're.
It's not actually silly at all, because you just mentioned some of the red flags of fraud. One of them being not taking holidays, two of them being the person everybody gets on with, three of them being the person who works really hard.
Exactly.
And if you look at some of the really big frauds, and I see across Waterhouse, I mentioned a couple, when I'm on to this being a certified fraud examiner, it's the ones that take billions are usually unbelievably charming.
Yeah.
They tend to have certain personality profiles. Narcissism is prone to fraud, so is megalomania. There's a third one that I can't think of, just in case you've got hits. And that's why you see audit plans, they always have that focus around management override, because that's, again, it's an area of risk. So it's being on the nail, actually.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate because some people become serial fraudsters, and we're talking in the States here, and I think I've mentioned this before, medical practices, actually not just in the States to be fair, are particularly vulnerable because they tend to have a personal practice manager type role that everybody relies on, that medical people tend to be...
Don't want to know about.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And they are just incredibly vulnerable to the type of fraud you were talking about.
Yeah.
They don't have their trust accounts per se, but yeah, the usual things, creating false invoices and so on and so forth, putting jobs like that, etc., etc.
On the basis that that the money taken will be returned, but then of course it doesn't get returned, and it snowballs from there. Yeah.
You actually put that motion on.
Sorry.
No.
Interrupt.
I'll second it.
Thank you. It's very pertinent, and funnily enough, complaints processes and whistleblowing are actually part of the process around monitoring. And when I do, remember a couple of years, 2022, I did this summary, the certified fraud examiners internationally do a report every 2 years, and it's the leading document that's referred to internationally in terms of occupational fraud. And I did a summary of the last one for council, for the committee. And the latest one has just come out, so I'm going to summarise that as well. But it's a huge problem. And the more awareness people have, and the majority of frauds are still found out through whistleblower.
Yes.
And then complaints all ties into this.
Yeah. But so therefore creating a climate that just people in the organisation are conscious, a climate in which they are conscious of these sort of issues is quite important, isn't it?
And that ties into the whole thing around codes of conduct and ethical codes, all those things, creating that, like you said, the climate of what the expectation is, what's good behaviour. And again, when you get your big fellas, to be involved in those ones, and it starts, the corruption's right at the top. And the people that work within the organisation tend to be, well, they comply or they leave, really.
So can a council employee, so we're thinking laterally here now.
I know.
This is dangerous stuff. Can it interfere with the system to, for example, show their rates as having been paid?
No. Oh, the only people, as I said earlier, can deal with the financial side is finance.
That's not the answer, though, is it?
But we have reconciliations with our banking, so.
But it was kept off as pay, where was it?
So it is the answer, because.
So it requires a summary.
Segregation of duties again. Everything has a segregation
Yeah.
of duties. So we get something comes in, cash, somebody will count it and then somebody checks it. So there's never a one person doing one thing and that's it. And if something's changed again, we've got an audit trail. There's an audit trail to everything, and the cash won't match up, or not checks and credit cards, etc. It won't match up because we reconcile that on a daily basis. So they can't change their own accounts to look like it's been paid.
So for electronic payments, which is how most things are paid these days,
Everything has to have
that's the same.
a reference number.
And the segregation of duties thing is really important, because for one person to commit fraud, they've got X probability. If it requires at least two people, the probability collapses.
Yeah.
It's still there, but then you get into collusion. The probability of getting two frauds to lead to getting collusion. So what Leslie was saying, if one person, when we're setting up a payroll, for example, I don't know how this works, but it was something like one person would be able to set up an account for a person with a bank account in, but they also can't be the person that can change it. And the person who prepares the payroll is someone else, and the person who authorizes it is someone else. And when it actually hits the bank, it's another couple of people. So you end up with multitudes of people checking things. Like, for example, I'm on the a statutory body, and we're quite small, and for that, I think we've still got probably 4 layers of protection around payments to make sure that no one can easily do any of that. And the final 2 signing off is myself and fellow councillors. And we go through and check everything, and it's all about segregating the duties, having tight controls,
Again,
checking things.
Automatic payments, a lot of, provided the reference number is there, that automatically goes through without any human intervention. So automatically goes into the accounts, onto the correct account. It's only the ones where perhaps the reference number is wrong and the system will put it into a bucket account and we have to allocate it. But again, you can't put it against something else without knowing it shows up as being incorrect, not reconciling.
Yeah.
One of some of those things I was referring to when we were talking about the exchange plan around the continuous monitoring, because you can actually have permanence. I don't know if New Zealand actually does this, to be honest, I expect probably would, or someone, but it's permanently running and monitoring transactions. So, for example, if there's a sudden increase in amount of a particular transaction going to a particular supplier, if person X is always winning a lot of tenders, if Dorothy can match names and addresses and see, say this address is linked to 3 different companies, but it's the same address with the same bank account and things like that, that's part of continuous monitoring to catch fraud. So there's some pretty clever stuff out there, actually.
So this, what you're talking about anyway, is part of our control environment, and that is always the focus of interim audit from Audit New Zealand, is looking at control environment to make sure that we have all those controls in place so that we can't be fraud.
Well, this is a good conversation, thank you. We've done the moving, so can we move to the role of work then?
Yes, the first item on the work plan is the external audit. On here it says we haven't got a finalised report, and that was at the time this was written, but however, as we know, that's arrived now, which we'll be reviewing after this. Everything else is just really a move forward of the work plan, except that we've included a deep dive on wellbeing, and we've just put it as in the COVID environment, but it's a broader aspect of that. And we've just entered in the policy review item that we've been asked to add. Thank you.
Any comments on the work plan? Anything you'd like to add? Okay, so I will move that the Wellington Group plan be received, and could I have a seconder, please? We'll now move to the later item, the audit management report for year ended 30th of June 2021. In fact, Leslie.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll get here for some reason. I believe it was circulated earlier. Hopefully you've had a chance to go through it. As far as the items on it are concerned, I wouldn't say that we've got anything really concerning on there. It's, to be honest, it's mainly the same kind of thing that we've had in the past. The only thing I would say is it's quite a bit about delays, really, and not being ready. Granted, we weren't ready ourselves this time. We lost the finance manager right at year end. The management accountant took over in that role, had to learn the numbers. She'd only been here a few months, so that delayed us. Plus, our finance team were also having to spend a lot of time on this Three Waters information, and that was a real kick to us because it was just so much information that we had to provide by a certain day, which had to be at the same time as the year end. It's very difficult to do both those things at the same time. So we weren't quite ready. I agree, but we also believe there are really strong failings on the New Zealand side as well. They were, I have to say this, not very organised. They have staffing issues as well, and that's why there was a delay in audits. We found them inexperienced and very ambiguous in the requests that they asked us for information were not clear. So I think that one, I am concerned that it strained our relationship even more with them. And I don't think, I think it's a good thing that we're now moving towards again.
Any comments on the audit management report? I know we haven't very much chance to read it. It's a good document, good solid reading. Do we have a mover that the report be received?
So
we
moved.
approve the audit management report for the year ended 30 June 2021 for public works. Second, please. We'll now move, and if I have seconded, then we go into public excluded session. Okay. Now adjourn the meeting for 2 minutes to allow us to disconnect from Zoom. Sorry.